Welcome to TPI, also known as Tommy Phillips Idiocy. This is the next generation of sports talk. We begin with the Packers' victory over the Vikings, which was exactly what they needed to do. Just pull out the win and not worry about style points. By the way, you can also find this analysis over at my blog at animebowl.com. A rivalry game is always difficult, no matter what the records are. This game was no different. The Vikings had pulled within 1 point after halftime and were on the verge of really putting the Packers in trouble. That's when the California coup of Aaron Rodgers set in, particularly on the next drive with the score 17-13. I read so many Super Bowl books about the games of the 60s through the early 90s as a child, and it was ingrained in my head what a legend Joe Montana was. Super Bowl 23, with his team down by 3 and looking at a long drive, he pointed to John Candy eating popcorn in the stands and told his teammates in the huddle, "There's John Candy." He wasn't fazed by anything. The 49ers went downfield to win it on a TD pass to John Taylor. Aaron Rodgers has that same calmness about his persona. It's as if nothing phases him. That drive with the lead at 4 points had some tense moments, but he kept on pulling out first downs. Then his touchdown pass was a simple supple pass to Eddie Lacy, who took it 10 yards to the house. I got the feeling that the whole time while I was biting my fingernails, Rodgers was just calm as ever. He's like the ultimate laid-back California guy. That drive took up so much time that the Vikings got a touchdown in 2, but ended up never getting the ball back after 2 first-down runs by Eddie Lacy. He grinded out the tough yards, and that was it. So it's on to the big matchup against New England next weekend, one that I'm sure will put ratings through the roof if it's a close one. An important one for the common games tiebreaker that may come into play with the Detroit Lions. Speaking of the Patriots, they ran up the score in their 34-9 victory over the Lions. This was classic Bill Belichick. Not only did he have the team punch it in for a touchdown from the 1-yard line with only 2 minutes to go and no reason to do anything but take 3 knees, but he had LeGarrette Blount do it. It sent a clear message to the rest of the league that he's up to his old 2007 tricks again. You better believe he signed Blount just to stick it to the Steelers. That's just the way he is. Turkey Day is coming soon, and we've got 3 games on Thanksgiving again this year. The fact that all of them are 3 all NFC matchups should tell you which conference is the power conference right now. Actually, it's true that Fox in the past has had to pay more for their TV rights because the NFC has more teams that move the needle. Now with the new TV deal, CBS is allowed to show all NFC matchups as well as NFC on the road games. In any case, we've got Bears versus Lions, a classic rivalry game. The Bears would actually climb back into the playoff race with a win to go to 6-6. This is the Lions' big day of the year, though, so I wouldn't bet on it. Last year, the Lions blew out the Packers on Thanksgiving and promptly lost every game the rest of the way. Just ask the Pirates, it's hard to shake a losing culture. The other games are also massive ones for the playoff picture. Philadelphia at Dallas and Seattle at San Francisco. If the turkey hasn't put you to sleep, then you should be watching all 3 games as they're big for the playoff picture in the NFC. Heck, had they thrown in a Cardinals-Packers game, we'd have every single NFC contender playing on the same day. I don't know how the NFL lucked out with one of their big ratings days ending up with all these good games. Usually they schedule something like, let's say the Monday night game next week between the Dolphins and the Jets. I had a big segment set up for Fun Times in Cleveland again, as the Browns gave up a last-minute field goal to the Falcons and were about to lose when I walked out of Buffalo Wild Wings. Then I looked at my phone and saw that they had actually come back to win. Blame Falcons head coach Mike Smith for this. He called timeout after a run and then had Matt Ryan throw a low percentage pass that fell incomplete and by doing so left the Browns with 55 seconds and all 3 timeouts. Mike Smith's an old man, so he's probably never played Madden. This goes my theory that all head coaches should play a full season of Madden before getting their jobs. Did you know that one of the reasons John Madden signed on to create the Madden games was that he wanted them to be an educational tool? Well, that's exactly what they've become. You learn a lot about clock management by playing Madden. You learn about 2-point conversions and onside kicks and when to call blitzes, and you especially learn when to call timeouts. Mike Smith looked like a fool out there stopping the clock for the Browns. If he had only fired up a season of Madden, he would have learned some common sense. My Fun Times in Cleveland Again segment that I'd planned also featured Cleveland's other team, the Cavs. LeBron James, whom I was a big fan of while he was in Miami, is watching his team utterly suck right now. Maybe the Cavs shouldn't have traded away number 1 overall draft pick Andrew Wiggins, with lots of promise, for perennial loser Kevin Love. Kevin Love is like Carmelo Anthony in that the more points he scores, the worse his team does. He's not who LeBron needs to be successful. Why do you need a big man who tries more 3-pointers than dunks when you've already got LeBron and Kyrie Irving? By the way, Irving pronounces his name wrong. It should be Kyrie, which means Lord have mercy. Mr. Mister and their 80s number 1 hit knew the right pronunciation. We stick with basketball as my 2 colleges, Penn State and USC, went at it in the Charleston Classic, one of those meaningless preseason tournaments. By the way, whatever happened to the Pitt Hoops Classic? That was Pitt's own preseason tournament, where they invited 7 AA schools to play against them at the beat. They'd rack up 3 easy wins and then hoist the banner into the rafters. It's right next to the CBI championship banner. Anyway, Penn State beat USC in the game, with Penn State moving to 4-1 and USC falling to 2-3 with some bad losses already. USC's head coach, by the way, is Andy Enfield, the guy who led Florida Gulf Coast to the Sweet 16. Apparently he hasn't brought Dunk City to LA. My hope by the end of the year is that Penn State's hoops team can actually make a field goal, unlike their other team. That's right, Penn State football is an utter joke. Now I realize that they have stupid sanctions, because Joe Paterno was an evil man who stood next to Jerry Sandusky as he was raping kids and applauded and cheered him on. Oh wait, Joe Pa was the one who reported Sandusky's crimes. Man, ESPN had me all confused there. Anyway, I think it's funny to see how bad Penn State's playing, because everyone claimed that Joe Pa was a figurehead and never did any coaching. Yet somehow Joe Pa found a way to win 9 games in a year and the Outback Bowl with freaking Anthony Morelli as his quarterback. James Franklin has a 5-star recruit as his starting QB and can't get the team to score a stupid touchdown, yet alone win a game. What's sad is that Illinois is so bad that Penn State almost won anyway. I've actually watched college football a little bit this year for the first time since Joe Pa passed. I don't know why Florida State isn't number 1 in the college football playoff. They've gone undefeated in a Power 5 conference and no one else has. Shouldn't that be enough? If Alabama had a whole bunch of ugly wins but was undefeated, they'd be writing stories about the legend of Nick Saban. Because they did do that last year. Florida State should be number 1. The SEC is overrated and should only get 1 team in the playoff, but you just know they'll get 2. Gary Danielson will be on the air during the SEC championship game campaigning for a 2nd team, and they'll get in. So that leaves 1 spot, and it'll be Oregon unless they choke again, in which case he'll be the Big 12 champion, probably Baylor. Ultimately, we're headed for a Florida State-Alabama national championship game in Arlington. The Penguins, they stunk it up this weekend against the Islanders. Granted, the Islanders have rebuilt and are now a contender. Still, it's disheartening to see the Pens play so bad. The Pascal Dupuis news is tough to take because he has always been one of my favorite players. The reason being that you could tell he was physically outmatched on the ice. He just worked harder, and that's why he succeeded. I stopped believing in the Penguins after the Boston debacle 2 seasons ago. They're going to have to do a lot more to get me to start believing in them again. Now we're moving inside Pirates baseball. The Pirates move swiftly in free agency as they sign no one. That's right, they're standing pat. They're kind of like a guy playing blackjack at a casino, standing pat on 11 up against a 10. Meaning, if they just added a really good piece to the puzzle, they'd win and win big. Yet instead of adding a player who could put them over the top, they're fine with what they've got. After all, as long as they're just competitive and challenge for a spot in the play-in game every year, that's all the front office cares about. Fans will keep on streaming in the PNC Park and keep on running on the field saying that God told them to and waving their Confederate flags at Leonard Skinner concerts. Who cares about the World Series? The World Series stuff, that's for San Francisco, St. Louis, Boston. It used to be for New York. We don't need no stinking World Series. We just need to get into the play-in game. Who cares if we waste Andrew McCutcheon's prime? Meanwhile, the Red Sox are trying to add Hanley Ramirez, the Marlins have locked up Giancarlo Stanton, and the Cardinals traded for Jason Hayward. Boy, do I wish I cheered for a baseball team that actually tries to win instead of pinching pennies. We've now got some soccer scores for you. 0-0, 0-0, 0-0, 0-0. Look at this one. 1-0. Wow, that one must have been a real thriller. Happy time. Happy 28th birthday, Jared Glasser. Jared got married this year and fathered a child as well. Jared works at Oakmont Bakery, and speaking of which, can I get some donuts? Happy anniversary to Catching Fire. The Hunger Games' second movie came out a year ago this week, and it was one of the best films I've ever seen. Following in the footsteps of the excellent first movie, Catching Fire was utterly brilliant. The third movie, Mockingjay, came out this week, and it was pretty good as well, although not nearly as fun or exciting as the first two. That's what happens when you try mixing in anti-war and anti-military politics, where it just doesn't make any sense. Happy trails, LeGarrette Blount. Blount decided to walk out on the Steelers because he wasn't getting the ball enough. The Steelers then decided to immediately cut him. An interesting move given the fact that Blount had gotten no punishment for being arrested earlier this year. Of course, Blount signed with the Pats, and you just know that if the Steelers and Patriots meet in the playoffs, Belichick's going to have them pounded in for the sole purpose of sewing them up. Alright, that does it for this week of TPI. I'm going to work on getting guests for future episodes of this program because even though I know everything, sometimes I decide to let other people have a turn. It's only fair. See you next week when by that time I will be engaged to Emily Van Camp. So long!